Liz, I don't know what you're getting so angry about. I mean, if you're going to use the key.
Look, if you're his wife or something...
His wife?
Why don't you get dressed?
Bye.
Picture this. It is 1990. A brand new television show is about to make its debut. And rather than winning over audiences with compelling storytelling or memorable characters, the lead actor walks onto the screen and takes a literal chainsaw to a cardboard cutout of the original movie star. That actually happened. And that single bizarre moment tells you absolutely everything you need to understand about Hollywood's strange and almost self-destructive obsession with taking movies that audiences genuinely love and grinding them down into weekly television disasters.
Why would the FSA be interested in a 14-year-old orphan?
The boy's father had a relatively high security clearance, and when he died in an automobile accident, we were naturally called in.
Today, we are counting down 12 of the most jaw-dropping failures in the entire history of movie-to-television adaptations, stretching from the late 1970s all the way to 2003. These are shows that grabbed iconic, beloved films, stripped away every single thing that made them special, handed the keys to the wrong people, and somehow expected audiences to simply accept the result. Here is your spoiler for today. Audiences did not accept it. So settle in, because we are counting down from number 12 all the way to number 1. The most spectacular TV adaptations that completely and utterly destroyed beloved movies. Number 12, Starman, ABC, 1986 to 1987.
I only have 2 hours before my flight, so why don't we just sit down and have a drink and talk about old times? Like when you did care who was in my bed.
Paul, you wouldn't dare go to Mount Hawthorne.
Sure.
We open our countdown with a film that occupies a genuinely special place in Hollywood history. The 1984 movie Starman gave Jeff Bridges one of the most delicate and emotionally precise performances of his career. He played an alien who assumes human form and must navigate life on Earth with vulnerability and quiet wonder. That performance was so deeply felt and so uniquely human that it earned Bridges an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. And here is a remarkable detail. It remains the only Oscar nomination that legendary director John Carpenter received across his entire filmography. The film holds an 82% score on Rotten Tomatoes to this day and has maintained a devoted cult following ever since.
Thank you, Mrs. Tamarkin. If you'll excuse me.
Mr. Fox, Scott Hayden's stepfather owned a little flower shop. He didn't have any kind of security clearance.
Outside line, please. I'm very busy, Mrs. Tamarkin.
Mr. Fox, I don't feel very good about giving you access to confidential files. I think you better tell me what you're looking for.
2 years after the film's release, ABC decided they wanted to extend that magic into a weekly series. Robert Hayes was cast in the lead role, stepping into territory that Jeff Bridges had made his own. The project carried some genuine credibility on paper. Michael Douglas, who had served as producer on the original film, came aboard as executive producer on the television version. But then ABC made a scheduling decision that proved catastrophic. They placed the show in the Friday night 10 p.m. slot, putting it in direct competition with two of the most dominant programs on television at the time, Falcon Crest and LA Law. The competition was simply overwhelming. Critics were not kind. They described the series as a tedious drag, observing that the storylines were aggressively formulaic, contributed nothing meaningful to the science fiction genre, and became tiresome within the first 5 minutes of each episode. Hayes was singled out as miscast in a role that Bridges had inhabited with such natural grace. Passionate fan clubs, calling themselves Blue Lights, organized letter-writing campaigns and formal petitions, demanding the network renew the series. None of it mattered. ABC canceled Starman after 22 episodes. Even the most devoted fan base cannot rescue a show that simply is not good enough. Number 11, Baby Boom, NBC, 1988 to 1989.
He-Man Woman Haters Club, 1937, 51 years ago. Boy, it's amazing how things haven't changed. Well, sure, there have been major improvements in the world, but in terms of things like the He-Man Woman Haters Club, well...
The 1987 comedy, Baby Boom, arrived at exactly the right cultural moment. Diane Keaton earned a Golden Globe nomination for her performance as a high-powered Manhattan career woman whose entire carefully constructed life is turned upside down when she unexpectedly inherits a baby. The film grossed nearly $27 million and perfectly captured the yuppie spirit of the era. One critic described Keaton's comedic approach as seamlessly fusing toughness with charm, and that precise combination was the engine that made the whole film run. NBC's adaptation appeared to have genuine advantages from the very beginning. Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire, the writer-directors of the original film, came on board as series creators. They insisted on doing something genuinely unusual for 1980s television by refusing to include a laugh track. Sam Wanamaker and the Kennedy twins returned to reprise their original film roles. Kate Jackson was brought in to take over Keaton's lead role. Despite all of that creative continuity and all of those advantages, the show still could not find solid ground. Critics observed that while Jackson brought a certain warmth and southern charm to the character, she was unable to execute the sharp comedic reversals that had generated the biggest and most memorable laughs in the original film. The adaptation also made the puzzling creative choice of eliminating the Vermont setting and the baby food business storyline entirely, both of which had given the movie its most emotionally satisfying arc. NBC placed the series on hiatus in December 1988 while promising creative improvements. Of the 13 episodes produced, only 10 ever made it to air, with the remaining episodes quietly broadcast during the summer of 1989. The sobering lesson, having the original creative team on board, guarantees nothing when the central performance simply cannot carry the material. Number 10, Logan's Run, CBS, 1977 to 1978.
Who are you? I'm Karen Four.
You're from the City of Domes?
I was. You're Logan.
How did you know?
Oh, we heard about the Sandman who became a runner.
To fully understand how badly this adaptation failed, you first need to appreciate how genuinely impressive the original film was. Logan's Run arrived in theaters in 1976, earned $25 million against a production budget of just $9 million, and won a Special Achievement Academy Award for its groundbreaking visual effects. The premise was bold and deeply unsettling. A future dystopian society that executes every citizen who reaches the age of 30. The film was visually spectacular, thematically provocative, and one of the most ambitious science fiction productions of its decade. CBS brought in Ivan Goff and Ben Roberts, the creators of Charlie's Angels, to develop the television series. Gregory Harrison took the lead role of Logan, with Heather Menzies joining as Jessica. But problems arrived almost immediately, beginning with perhaps the worst possible timing in television history. The series premiered just months before Star Wars landed in theaters, and permanently and completely redefined what audiences expected science fiction to look, sound, and feel like. Overnight, everything about the Logan's Run series felt old and inadequate. CBS demanded a family-friendly tone throughout, which required eliminating the film's central death ritual and removing any mature or sensual elements from the storytelling. The production budget was so severely restricted that the show was forced to reuse footage directly from the original film, footage that critics noted already looked dated at the time of the 1977 premiere. The network compounded these problems by constantly shuffling the show between time slots, which effectively communicated to audiences that CBS had no real confidence in what it was airing. Critics described the episodes as looking like they had been rushed together on a minimal budget with minimal care. Of the 14 episodes produced, only 12 ever aired. By most accounts, the network had mentally moved on before the show ever had a genuine opportunity to find its audience. Number 9, RoboCop, the series syndication, 1994.
Cash. Sold my kidney. Pays to be clean living.
Hey! I'm thirsty.
Come on, Bobby, let's go. It's time to go home. Come on.
Paul Verhoeven's 1987 RoboCop is one of the most brilliantly constructed science fiction films of its era. It earned over $53 million at the box office, holds a 92% score on Rotten Tomatoes, won an Academy Award for Best Sound Editing, and delivered something genuinely rare in mainstream cinema, a full-scale action blockbuster that simultaneously functioned as a razor-sharp satire of corporate greed, media manipulation, and American consumer culture. It was ultra-violent, deeply subversive, and built entirely for adult audiences. So naturally, someone decided to turn it into a children's show. The 1994 syndicated series was deliberately redesigned to be lighter, gentler, and specifically engineered to appeal to children aged roughly 10 and above. In this television version, RoboCop no longer killed criminals. Instead, he deployed non-lethal gadgets to neutralize them without causing harm. The biting, satirical intelligence that had made the original film so memorable was flattened down into something resembling Batman-style campy humor. The production even created action figures that delivered anti-drug messages. The budget exceeded $1 million per episode, making it an expensive series to sustain. 22 episodes aired before the network chose not to renew, primarily because the production costs had become impossible to justify. Critics noted that the CGI effects aged extremely poorly, and that every trace of danger, intelligence, and satirical edge the franchise had once possessed was thoroughly eliminated. When a masterpiece of R-rated satire gets transformed into a weekly public service announcement for children, the original creative vision has been completely abandoned. Number 8. The Bad News Bears, CBS, 1979 to 1980.
Yeah, Mom, it's Rudy. Yeah, can I sleep over at Ahmad's tonight? Hey, Dad? Yeah, is it okay if I spend the night at Tanner's?
The 1976 film The Bad News Bears is one of those rare comedies that derives its humor entirely from its refusal to sanitize or soften anything about real life. It holds a 97% score on Rotten Tomatoes, placing it among the highest-rated comedies of its entire era. Walter Matthau's performance as the sardonic, beer-drinking, foul-mouthed Little League coach was the absolute heart of the film, and the fact that the children on his team cursed freely and behaved badly was not incidental to the comedy. It was the entire foundation of it. The movie functioned specifically because it refused to be wholesome or family-friendly. CBS looked at all of this and decided it would make ideal Saturday night family television. Jack Warden stepped in as Coach Buttermaker, with a young Corey Feldman joining the cast. But the central problem was structurally impossible to solve. You cannot take material that is built entirely on profanity, alcoholism, and deliberate cynicism and adapt it for broadcast network television without destroying every quality that made it worth watching. The cursing kids became well-behaved. The alcoholism became an amusing character quirk. The film's genuinely rude and irreverent comic spirit became standard sitcom content. CBS made everything worse by constantly moving the show between different time slots, leaving audiences unable to find it consistently. The series was canceled just 3 episodes into its second season, with 3 more episodes left unaired. It later resurfaced in reruns on Nickelodeon and Comedy Central, but the sanitized version never came close to capturing what had made the original film so genuinely funny and so memorable. Number 7, Working Girl, NBC, 1990.
Tess, honey, now I know it's not part of your job description, but I have just 1 or 2 minor personal errands that I need you to handle while I'm on vacation.
Okay, Mr. Dixon.
These are the tickets for my dry cleaning.
Okay.
Mike Nichols' 1988 film Working Girl was a genuine cultural and commercial achievement. It earned over $103 million worldwide, received 6 Academy Award nominations including Best Picture, and won Best Original Song. Melanie Griffith's portrayal of a Staten Island secretary navigating the cutthroat world of Manhattan corporate finance became a feminist touchstone of the era, a performance built on a specific and irreplaceable combination of vulnerability, determination, and street-smart charm. NBC launched a television adaptation in April 1990, and the show introduced audiences to a then completely unknown actress named Sandra Bullock. 4 full years before Speed would make her one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Bullock stepped into the role just weeks before filming began, after the original casting choice, Nancy McKeon, dropped out. Critics showed little sympathy for the result. Tom Shales of the Washington Post wrote that, while the original film had not been a particularly great movie, Griffith's specific charm had been enough to make it work. And by contrast, the television version offered absolutely nothing to compensate for her absence. The San Diego Union observed that Bullock could not bring the particular combination of toughness and quirky warmth that Griffith had made central to the character. The Chicago Tribune called the series little more than a hollow outline of the original. The show received a 34 on Metacritic with 0% positive reviews. NBC canceled it in May 1990. Of the 12 episodes produced, only 8 made it to air. The show later received brief reruns on TV Land in the mid-1990s, but only after Bullock had already become a major star through other work. Number 6, Dirty Dancing, CBS, 1988 to 1989.
And I haven't been back here since my folks were divorced. Not much has changed, but I feel different. Jackie Kennedy is my role model now instead of Donna Reed, and I traded all my Pat Boone LPs for Little Stevie Wonder and the Chiffons.
Few films of the 1980s generated the kind of pure, sustained cultural phenomenon that Dirty Dancing produced. The 1987 movie earned $64 million domestically and over $170 million worldwide, all on a production budget of just $5 million. It won an Academy Award for Best Original Song and made history as the very first film to sell 1 million copies on VHS. The chemistry between Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey was the kind that simply cannot be manufactured. It was electric, authentic, and completely central to everything that made audiences fall in love with the film. CBS moved quickly, rushing a series to air in October 1988, only 14 months after the film's theatrical release, and critically, at the precise moment the movie was simultaneously arriving in homes on VHS tape. None of the original cast returned. Melora Hardin took on the role of Baby, with Patrick Cassidy stepping in as Johnny Castle. Here is the genuinely interesting twist in this story. Critics were actually reasonably impressed by the new leads. Several reviewers suggested that Hardin was arguably a stronger performer in the Baby role than Jennifer Grey had been, and that Cassidy brought a natural instinct to the Johnny Castle character. But none of that ultimately mattered, because the format itself was the fatal problem. 30-minute weekly episodes could not possibly sustain a romantic arc that had required a full film to develop with proper emotional weight. The Saturday 8 p.m. time slot created an additional problem. The show's target demographic was out on actual dates rather than home-watching television. The premiere attracted 14 million viewers, but by the finale, that number had collapsed to just 7.5 million. CBS canceled the series when it proved unable to maintain viewership above 10 million. Melora Hardin went on to achieve genuine success as John on The Office, and Paul Feig, who appeared in the series, went on to create Freaks and Geeks and direct Bridesmaids No. 5. Uncle Buck, CBS, 1990 to 1991. John Hughes's 1989 comedy Uncle Buck earned nearly $80 million worldwide, and the singular reason it worked was John Candy. Candy's portrayal of the lovable, chaotic, big-hearted uncle who suddenly finds himself responsible for 3 kids he barely knows was one of the warmest and most naturally charming screen performances of his entire career. The film succeeded entirely because of Candy's specific and irreplaceable comedic presence. His ability to be simultaneously ridiculous, genuinely kind, and deeply likable in a way that felt completely effortless. The television adaptation made a creative decision that was, to describe it generously, extremely puzzling. Rather than maintaining the temporary babysitting premise of the original film, the series chose to kill off the children's parents in a car accident and make Buck their permanent legal guardian. The children were then scripted to make casual jokes about their parents having died. Kevin Meaney was cast in the lead role, taking over from Candy. The pilot episode also featured a young child telling Uncle Buck that he sucked, a moment that was reportedly the first time that specific phrase had been used on American network television. Critics responded with ferocity. The Los Angeles Times described Meaney as crass and completely unrelatable when placed alongside the memory of Candy's warmth and charm. The Deseret News declared it the single worst new show of that fall season, calling it not merely vulgar and tasteless, but simply unfunny at every level. John Hughes himself was reported to be deeply displeased with what had been done to his material. The show was canceled after 16 of its 22 produced episodes made it to air, desperately moved from Monday nights to Friday nights in a last-ditch attempt to salvage the ratings. 6 episodes were never broadcast at all. One notable footnote, a young Lacey Chabert appeared as a neighbor girl in the series, years before her starring role in Party of Five and her memorable appearance in Mean Girls. Number 4, Fast Times, CBS, 1986.
Yo, Mr. Hammond, how's it going?
your hand?
These are my children.
Amy Heckerling's 1982 Fast Times at Ridgemont High is the kind of film that genuinely altered the landscape of American cinema. It earned over $27 million at the box office, launched the careers of Sean Penn, Phoebe Cates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Nicolas Cage, and was eventually inducted into the National Film Registry as a work of significant cultural importance. The film functioned because of its honest, frank, and distinctly R-rated portrayal of teenage experience, including storylines involving sexuality and abortion that were handled with a surprising degree of authenticity and maturity. The logical question, then, is how you adapt all of that for 1986 broadcast network television. Apparently, the answer involves hiring Moon Unit Zappa as a teenage slang consultant and proceeding with cautious optimism. Amy Heckerling herself came on board as producer. Cameron Crowe served as creative consultant. Ray Walston and Vincent Schiavelli returned to reprise their roles from the original film. Danny Elfman's band Oingo Boingo contributed the theme song. None of it proved sufficient. Critics described the sanitized television result as something resembling a tame and completely defanged version of Punky Brewster. One particularly cutting reviewer suggested CBS would have served its audience better by filling the time slot with repeated emergency broadcast system alerts. The network canceled the show after just 7 episodes. The significant silver lining: Patrick Dempsey appeared in a lead role years before becoming McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. Courtney Thorne-Smith went on to prominent roles in Melrose Place and Ally McBeal, and Claudia Wells, who appeared in the series, had previously played the original Jennifer Parker in Back to the Future. Number 3, Casablanca, NBC, 1983.
I'd like to speak to you. You ain't gonna like what I'm gonna say.
Why say it?
Somebody gotta say it. You're making a fool of yourself. And if you don't stop, you're gonna get hurt. And personally, I think you're gonna get hurt real bad.
Stop talking, Sam. You don't know what you're talking about.
Let us take a moment to discuss the concept of pure Hollywood hubris. In 1983, NBC executives looked at Casablanca, a film with a 99% score on Rotten Tomatoes, 3 Academy Awards including Best Picture, a near-universal consensus as one of the greatest American films ever produced, and one of the most iconic performances in cinema history from Humphrey Bogart, and made the decision that this was an excellent foundation for a weekly television series. David Soul was cast as Rick Blaine, the role that had defined Humphrey Bogart's entire legacy. Hector Elizondo took on the role of Captain Renault, appeared as Sasha in one of his earliest screen appearances. The series took a prequel approach, setting the story before the events of the film, but in doing so, it stripped away all of the wartime urgency, moral complexity, and desperate romantic tension that had given it in 1983, finding it immediately unwatchable and declaring it a series that had earned its own cancellation. Here is the remarkable irony. Julius J. Epstein, one of the original film's screenwriters, actually wrote 2 episodes of the series. The show even won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Cinematography. None of it mattered in the slightest. NBC pulled the series after just 3 episodes, quietly burning off the final 2 during late summer. Only 5 episodes were ever produced in total. There are certain films that should simply never be touched. Number 2, Ferris Bueller, NBC, 1990.
I think it was John Lennon who once said, "There's no such thing as talent. It's just knowing how to do something."
And now we arrive at the show that inspired this entire countdown's opening image. The chainsaw, the cardboard cutout, the moment that said everything. Ferris Bueller's Day Off earned over $70 million at the box office, was later inducted into the National Film Registry, and gave audiences one of the most beloved and purely joyful characters in 1980s American cinema. Matthew Broderick's portrayal of Ferris, a teenager who speaks directly to the camera, bends the rules of reality with effortless cool and transforms a single day off school into a legendary adventure, made the character a genuine cultural icon. The film's fourth wall-breaking intimacy felt fresh, personal, and completely unlike anything else at the time. NBC launched a television adaptation starring Charlie Schlatter, and in the now infamous pilot episode, Schlatter took an actual chainsaw to a cardboard cutout of Matthew Broderick's image. a symbolic gesture that effectively told every fan of the original film to abandon their affection and start over with someone new. John Hughes refused any involvement with the project and specifically requested that his name not appear in any promotional materials for the show. Critics responded with something close to unified contempt. Tom Shales wrote that if this television version was supposed to be the real Ferris Bueller, then the real Ferris Bueller should simply be quiet. The Orlando Sentinel described Schlotter's performance as a thoroughly irritating television experience and suggested that this particular Ferris could take the entire year off rather than just a day. The Boston Globe made the sharp observation that Broderick's Ferris was a character that young audiences genuinely wanted to spend time with, while Schlotter's version was one they would actively want to avoid. Entertainment Weekly simply described the character as an insufferable little twerp. The series earned a 10% score on Rotten Tomatoes. A promotional sneak preview attracted nearly 23 million curious viewers, but that audience evaporated almost immediately once the regular series began. By October, NBC was already publicly acknowledging that cancellation was a real possibility. The bitter irony of the entire situation. Fox launched Parker Lewis Can't Lose that very same fall, a show built on a nearly identical premise, and it ran successfully for 3 full seasons. Ferris Bueller was canceled in December and replaced on the schedule by Blossom, which went on to become a genuine hit, and the actress playing Jeannie, the sister character. That was Jennifer Aniston, performing 4 full years before Friends would make her one of the most recognizable television stars in the world. Number 1, My Big Fat Greek Life, CBS, 2003.
It's coming all this way from Greece. Who is it this week?
It's your niece, Bereniki.
No, dear, Bereniki's on the 3rd.
It's cousin Ariana. Right.
And here at the very top of our countdown, we find the most spectacular, the most dramatic, and by every measurable standard, the most complete failure of them all. My Big Fat Greek Wedding was not simply a successful movie. It was one of the most extraordinary success stories in the history of independent American cinema. It earned $241 million domestically, making it the highest-grossing romantic comedy ever produced in the United States. It delivered a staggering 6,000% return on its $5 million production budget. It remained in theaters for 88 consecutive weeks. It received an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. By every conceivable measurement, it was a phenomenon of rare and genuine magnitude. CBS's television adaptation appeared to have assembled every possible advantage. Nia Vardalos, who had written and starred in the original film, returned as co-creator and continued in the lead role. Michael Constantine, Lainie Kazan, and Andrea Martin all came back to reprise their beloved original characters. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, who had produced the film, signed on as executive producers of the series. The premiere episode drew nearly 23 million viewers, the highest-rated debut of any sitcom since 1998. Every indicator suggested an enormous and sustained success was imminent, and then came the collapse. Week 2, 16.6 million viewers. Week 3, 13.3 million. Week 4, $12.4 million. Week 5, 9.7 million. By the 5th episode, the show had surrendered 57% of its total audience. Television analysts and industry historians have consistently described it as the most precipitous and dramatic ratings freefall in the history of American sitcoms. The central, unavoidable problem was a single casting issue that could not be resolved. John Corbett, who had played Ian Miller in the original film, and whose natural chemistry with Vardalos had been fundamental to the movie's emotional success, was unavailable due to a prior commitment to another CBS production. His replacement, Stephen Eckholt, was almost universally criticized for appearing to have no chemistry whatsoever with Vardalos on screen. Viewers expressed their disappointment loudly and clearly. Variety observed that the characters seemed to operate under the assumption that expressing ethnic identity required constant screaming at maximum volume. The New York Post awarded the show half a star out of a possible 4, comparing it to a plate of lukewarm and thoroughly unappealing leftovers. Other critics noted that whatever authentic warmth and human charm the original film had generated was immediately and completely neutralized by the addition of a studio laugh track. CBS canceled the series after just 7 episodes. The show had possessed every conceivable advantage. the original star, the original supporting cast, Academy Award-winning producers, and the most-watched sitcom premiere in 5 years. And it still failed completely and spectacularly. So what is the single connecting thread that runs through all 12 of these failures? What kept going wrong decade after decade across different networks, different genres, and different levels of creative ambition? The pattern that proved most consistently and most fatally damaging was the loss of irreplaceable star power. Jeff Bridges, Walter Matthau, John Candy, Matthew Broderick, Jennifer Grey, Patrick Swayze, Melanie Griffith, Humphrey Bogart, Diane Keaton. These are not merely talented actors. They are performers whose specific presence, timing, energy, and personality define the films they appeared in so completely that no replacement, however skilled, could occupy the same space. Television casting directors tried repeatedly, and they failed repeatedly for exactly the same reason every time. The second recurring pattern was network sanitization, destroying the source material. RoboCop's savage and intelligent corporate satire was transformed into a children's program. Fast Times at Ridgemont High's honest and frank portrayal of teenage reality became something critics compared to Punky Brewster. The Bad News Bears' genuinely irreverent and profane comedy became standard family sitcom content. Logan's Run's bold dystopian premise was stripped of everything edgy or challenging. In each case, the networks methodically removed the precise qualities that had made the original films worth watching and worth loving. The third pattern was the destructive rush to capitalize on success before properly understanding what that success actually meant. Dirty Dancing premiered on CBS at the exact moment the VHS was arriving in stores. Audiences had every reason to simply rent the real thing instead. My Big Fat Greek Life attempted to extend a cultural phenomenon that had already run its natural emotional course. And the fourth pattern was the fundamental incompatibility between episodic television and stories that were designed to be told once, completely, and with a final satisfying resolution. Films like Working Girl and My Big Fat Greek Wedding are complete emotional experiences with proper endings. Weekly sitcoms demand perpetual unresolved conflict, ongoing tension, and indefinite incompleteness, a format that structurally undermined everything that had made these stories powerful and resonant in the first place. But here is the silver lining that connects all 12 of these failures in a genuinely hopeful way. These disasters became unexpected launching pads. Jennifer Aniston appeared in Ferris Bueller 4 years before Friends. Sandra Bullock starred in Working Girl 4 years before Speed. Patrick Dempsey had a lead role in Fast Times years before Grey's Anatomy. Lacey Chabert appeared in Uncle Buck before Party of Five and Mean Girls. Paul Feig performed in Dirty Dancing before creating Freaks and Geeks. Ray Liotta had an early role in Casablanca before achieving major stardom. Sometimes the most spectacular failures quietly plant the seeds of remarkable future success, just never for the shows themselves. So the next time you encounter an announcement that another beloved film is being developed into a weekly television series, remember these 12 cautionary tales. Some stories are told perfectly exactly once. Some performances cannot be recast. Some magic genuinely cannot be repackaged, are rescheduled and delivered on a weekly basis. And some films should simply be allowed to remain exactly what they are, complete, perfect, and permanently untouched. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way through this countdown of television's most spectacular and most instructive failures, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. And leave a comment below. Which one of these 12 shows do you actually remember watching?